Wheels keep spinning to the morning light. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning to the morning light. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning to the morning light. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning to the morning light. Spinning to the morning light.
This is Babz Rawls-Ivy from New Haven, Connecticut, and you're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, streaming live at newhavenindependent.org.
Good morning, beautiful people. Welcome back to the second hour of LoveBabz, LoveTalk on Babz Rawls-Ivy. I'm so delighted. I get to talk to Cesar Aleman. Good morning.
Good morning, Babz. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
You have the best hair I've ever seen.
Thank you. I was going to say the same thing to you. I wish mine was purple. For those of you on the line who can't see it.
How are you? Welcome and all of that.
Thank you so much. I'm doing really well. I'm excited for the weekend. It's Friday, and more than anything, I'm excited for our work, and I'm excited to be here with you, talking about that a little bit. So
I'm excited. So listen, when I got the press release, I was just like floored by it. So this is, you're going to facilitate and coordinate the team of community foundation chief executives and senior level staff from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, and the Fairfield County's Community Foundation to develop collective strategies to dismantle structural racism and advance social and economic mobility, aligning the strategic and programmatic efforts of these three foundations to create an actionable plan that builds on each organization's individual strengths. So exactly, now what you gonna be doing?
Listen, when you said it like that, I was like, you tell me. Yeah, it's a lot, but I think ultimately what we are trying to do is to build on the work of each foundation and to really align our strategic giving and our programmatic content to break the chains of poverty in our urban areas in Connecticut.
Wow.
We recognize that urban areas and the communities who live there and who live with us are trapped in generational poverty, generation after generation, and it's not by happenstance. It's very intentional. It is the result of structural racism, institutional racism, and we recognize that if we want to go ahead and actually change that we need to work together and figure out the best way to align our work and to work with our communities to figure out the ways that we can actually shift that. You know, decades ago, it used to be that you could be born into poverty and climb, so to speak, the socioeconomic ladder. And that you could potentially like have a better life for yourself than you had growing up. Now that has been changing over the last few decades. And what we know to be true is that people who are born into poverty are oftentimes staying in poverty. And that's, again, not by happenstance. It is intentional. It is the result of the creation of the systems that we live in. And we need to do something about that. We need to change it. And we know that we can't do that alone. And I think these foundations have been doing a lot of really great work already to do that in their respective regions. But now we have an opportunity to collectively come together and put together our strengths and our resources to really figure out how do we do this collectively with our communities across the state.
Well, does this feel, I mean, I don't know if I ever thought of a community foundation anywhere being this attentive to matters of racism and equity and the economic divisiveness of poverty. I don't know if I've ever heard a community foundation address this, let alone three coming together to sort of talk about, and three very white foundations in very white spaces talking about this.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think that this is something that has traditionally happened. And so we are part of a larger cohort at the national level, the Nexus for Equity and Opportunity nationwide. And we are working collaboratively with 7 other foundations across the country who are coming together around this as well. And I think that, to be frank with you, you're absolutely right. I don't think that there has been such an explicit message that comes with the resources needed to actually address it from the philanthropy sector, at least to my knowledge. And I will admit that I'm relatively new to the philanthropy world, but I think you're correct. I think that this is noteworthy because of that, and I think that it's a real opportunity that comes with some real possibility for change.
So, Cesar, this is not going to be easy work because you've got a couple of tracks here. First of all, you got to convince a communities that these white folks with this money are going to come in and try to do something or elevate or raise some awareness around or put some dollars toward whatever is ailing, whatever you all identify as the real root causes of these things. And two, they've got these foundations got board of trustees that I'm sure bought into this or buying into this. And I don't think they're going to know just how hard this is a heavy lift this may or may not be. So I mean, I know you come from a background of doing this work. So how do you talk to the community and how do you talk to the trustees to help them understand that this is going to be hard, but stay connected?
That's a really great question, Babz. And I think you're absolutely right. This is going to be really hard work. It's been hard work all along. It's work that is not new. A lot of people have been doing it. We haven't maybe been calling it that, or some people have, but it is work that has been happening. Even at each of our foundations now, it has been intentional. It is part of some of our strategic plans and conversations. And you're right, the board and the teams at each foundation, they know what they're signing up for, and we know that it will be difficult. I think that we anticipate that hardship to come. My personal approach to doing this work is to do the work in a really relational way and to build strong relationships where trust can exist so that we can move through the challenges together and talk about the problems as they come. And I think that is at every level, and it's particularly important with community. I think that when we're talking about doing this work, we're talking about doing this work with community. We're not talking about doing this work for community or on behalf of community. We're talking about doing this work together. And so that requires relationship building and it requires trust. And that in and of itself comes with its own challenges because we know that there is some distrust and that there's some trust already built in. We're really lucky to have 3 foundations who have been doing work in our communities for close to 100 years in a couple of cases. And they have relationships in the community and they have trust and they have relationships with nonprofits and grantees and the people that they work with. And so that's going to go a long way. And similarly, there's going to be some challenges for people who don't have that trust developed yet. So that's going to be where I would like to focus my energy, is really to figure out how do we strengthen that, because this work is going to require all of us.
So tell me a little bit about who you are, Cesar. Where do you come from? What is your background experience? And what draws you to this work?
Thanks, Matt. That's a really good question. And it's a really personal question for me. I come from, I was born in Mexico and I immigrated to the United States when I was very young. That was the first opportunity move that my family made. I grew up in LA. I grew up in California, predominantly brown and Black neighborhood in a Chicano culture. And I come to this work from a really personal place, recognizing that I grew up and was socialized in a world, in a society that was very much rooted in the promise of the American dream, the promise of prosperity. And my family was also socialized in that way. We received messages and still do to this day, from every possible outlet, explicit and implicit, out loud, written, implied, that tells us that if you work hard, you put your head down and you follow the rules and you do all the right things. For those of you on the air who are not seeing me, quote unquote, the right things, whatever that might be, that you can prosper, that you can find economic success and climb the economic ladder and get the American dream. And for me, that felt true for a long time. I also grew up growing up in an immigrant community, in an undocumented immigrant. There's a lot of fear associated with it. So you really get ingrained this idea of like, follow the rules, do the right thing, and just put your head down and work hard. So I come from that. I come from that background, and here I am, 35 years later. And along the way, I got to college. I did all the right things that I was told. I got to college. I graduated. I got a job.
Where'd you go to college?
In Madison, in Wisconsin. So I went to school, Edgewood College. Yeah, long way. Listen, that's another story for another time. But I got out of college and I thought to myself, like, all right, I did it. I did all the things. I put my head down. I graduated. I have this job. I then really began to feel the reality of what it meant to be an undocumented immigrant in this country, having a really hard time finding a job, feeling some frustration that I couldn't use my education the way that I wanted to. But even once I found a job and I was able to really cement and start my career, and I got to a place where I was a middle class, quote unquote, person, I thought to myself, like, I did it. I achieved the American dream. And it felt empty. It felt hollow. And once I started to recognize that it didn't come with all the things that I had hoped for and that my family had hoped for, I became disillusioned.
But so what were some of the things you were hoping for?
I think that I anticipated all of the challenges that had traditionally existed for me to go away. The challenges of, I anticipated a feeling of belonging is really what I anticipated. I felt that I was going to feel like I belonged.
Like, look, I have a degree. Look, I have a job.
Yeah.
Look, I live in a nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm one of you.
And along the way, I didn't. And I began working with people like me. I began to working with my people, and I began seeing that that people who were working really hard, much harder than I was in terms of how many hours they worked, how many jobs they had, people who were really doing all the right things, people who were following the message that I had followed, were not getting the type of economic growth and success and the upward mobility that they deserved. And it really challenged me to think about the narrative that I had been fed. This idea that, that if we work hard, we'll make it. It's an outdated, unreal, narrative that we have been pushing for a really long time. And it's actually harmful, and it's not true. In our communities, they're working hard. They're working multiple jobs. They're doing all the right things. And they're not getting to where they need to get and where they deserve to get. And I think that has been, when you ask me, like, why do I do this? Where do I come from? That's where I come from. I don't come from generational wealth. I don't come from a place where I am in the mainstream and I fit into the status quo. I come from a place where I have been in the margins and I am an outlier, and I made my way to the mainstream and realized really quickly that was not the rule, that was not the norm, that's an exception. And the systems that are in place and the institutions that are in place are meant to keep it that way. And the narrative that we have and the words that we use to talk about ourselves and our communities and the society that we live in are actually meant to take the shine away from the root problems that exist and to place all of the responsibility in people individually and to blame people for being poor instead of blaming the system for trapping people in poverty intentionally. And that's where I come from. That's what motivates me. When you ask me, like, what do I do this? That's why I do it. I do it because I do it for myself. I always talk about this with people. I do this work for me in relationship with other people at all times. Because when I've done it for me by myself, it's been empty and I've gotten nowhere. And I got to a place where no matter how well I was doing, my family wasn't doing well, my neighborhoods weren't doing well, my community wasn't doing well, my people weren't doing well. And to live in a world where you have a lot when other people have so little, it's that's not the world that I want to live in. That's not the society that I want to be a part of and build. And so I dedicated my life and my work to creating a reality that's more reflective of the values that I have. And that's why I do this work. And that's why I think it's important. And from there, we can talk about all the professional experiences and that I've had doing work. But really, for me, that's the most important cornerstone of my work. Is I think we have externalized why people should do this work, why we should help others. It's always framed in charity. Do this for other people. Do this because other people need it. And for me, it's like, no, do this for you. Do this for you because it's important and it matters to you, because your values tell you, because your faith calls you, because whatever is deeper within you calls you to do this for yourself, but do it with others. Bring other people along, because we're stronger together.
Yes.
My mom would always say, if you want to go far, go alone. No, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others.
That's an African proverb.
It sure is.
So, all right. So what was it about this collaboration that said, you know what, I want to be a part of this? Like I think I can bring something to this collaboration that could further their reach or whatever it is they're trying to do here.
For me, what's really powerful and important and possible with this collaboration is that we have an opportunity to organize people and organize money. I come to this work from a background that includes organizing, right? And I think about organizing as a really fundamental strategy for change, for social impact. And I think a lot about the way in which we have to build power if we want to disrupt and we want to change and transform the systems that we live with. And so if we want to do that, there's multiple ways of doing it. But the way that I understand power and the way that I understand we got to build it is you can organize people or you can organize money. And I saw this collaborative bringing the two together and saying, we can organize people with money. And we can really come together and say collectively, how do we do this work together?
I love this. Yeah. I've never heard anybody talk about organizing money. You're the first person I've ever heard that say organizing money. It's just never a concept that is discussed or talked about. There's always talking about organizing people, but there's never any discussion about organizing money. And to me, when I hear organizing money, I hear a little bit of reallocation of resources. I hear putting money where it can do some good. That is very powerful, Cesar. Talk a little bit more about organizing people and money together.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that we have right now a really, and rightly so, we have a focus on organizing people. People have power, and that power is expansive, and we can build it and we can grow it. As an organizer, my experiences have been that there comes a moment in every organizer's path where you cut a problem into an issue. You figure out what strategies you might want to implement. You build power. Then you do a power map. And then you think about all right, do I actually have a chance to move this issue forward and win this campaign? And how do I do it? And oftentimes what I have found in my experience, limited as it may be, is that money gets in the way. And we can put some really practical examples out there. We want healthcare for all. You get everybody behind this idea. You have campaigns. We had a really great win recently. The folks who were organizing Husky for All, and they were able to get Husky for undocumented immigrants ages 0 to 8. And you get to the point, and what are the issues that block that? well, where are we going to get the money? Where do we get the money to make this happen? Where do we get, how are we going to pay for this? So oftentimes in organizing, when we get to a really good, really well organized campaign, when we have people behind it, when we have built the power, money becomes the barrier. Money becomes the obstacle that doesn't allow us to move forward. So that's why I think it's so crucial to organize money as well, because then money is the thing that, like, the one lever and the barrier that we can remove and collectively figure out how do we do this together. And so I think that what it looks like, it's exactly like what you said, right? It's like it has to do with reallocation, it has to do with investment, it has to do with some risk taking to do things that maybe we have not done before. And I'm also like really, I'm very mindful of the fact that a lot of people, much smarter than I, have been trying to do this for a long time. And I think that there are a lot of strategies that have been tried and failed in the past. And I think a lot about how sometimes it's timing. Sometimes something that somebody tried, somebody was smart, innovative, and got to something that was really, really potential, like really, they had the potential to really change. But the world was not ready for that. Society was not ready. We have a responsibility to go back and revisit those ideas and to really think about, is the timing right now?
I love that.
I'm excited to figure out if it is.
So do you think about in terms, have you started this job yet?
I just started, Babz. Just started. You caught me fresh, right at the very beginning.
So do you think about, as you create a strategy for this, do you think about how do you quantify this successfully? How do you measure success? How do you know if you're making inroads? And how do you share that? How do you tell people, well, you know what, this collaboration is successful because, and do you have a time frame for any of this?
Yeah, these are excellent questions. So I think that is going to be a really important piece of this work, is really thinking about how do we, what outcomes are we looking for, and how do we measure them? And we right now are lucky to be part of this national cohort, the NEON Network, that is going to be bringing other foundations who are also doing this work in their areas to help us think about some of the things that they are doing and to collectively talk about what those outcomes and those measures can be. And of course, we will have our own here in Connecticut as we think about what strategies we're going to implement. So I think that there are still some things that need to be determined. I think that for me, one of the things that feels really important is that is a place where we can really disrupt. I think that there is an expectation that we're going to get instant results and gratification in some of these things. I think that we all know that change sometimes comes slow. And so we need to really be thinking about playing the long game and thinking about and listening. And this is where we, you asked me, like, how are we going to do this? This is where we need to actually work with community and really listen and really build trust. And that trust goes both ways, so that we can start thinking about making long-term investments in people and in our communities, and thinking about how will this look when we have achieved it? What are some things that are helping us figure out what those indicators are and what those measures are? And I don't have the answers for you today. And I think that they're going to morph. If I did, I would tell you. I would tell you, Babz. I would not be hanging on to this.
I hope you don't have the answers yet. I want to follow your process and see what you discover.
Yeah, and so I think that's I think the bigger thing is that we need to figure that out. And the timeline, I think that that is also going to be a work in progress, developing what that timeline will look like. What I can tell you is that I'm here to work with this collaborative and to help figure out exactly how we can cement a strong foundation that we can build on. And there is going to be a lot of work ahead of us. And as we continue to dig into the work and do it and experience the challenges and the opportunities and build on those, we'll have a better sense of what we need to do. But I think you and I both know that we certainly are not going to dismantle racism in Connecticut in the next 10 years.
No.
Although I
But
believe
we can get started.
absolutely, yeah. And I'll be more hopeful than that and say we can continue the work that a lot of our people are doing already, and we really can bring it to the forefront in a way that that could potentially create more than just incremental changes and really have some significant changes. Like for me, if you ask me, Cesar, personally, what does this look like and what does it feel like? For me, it feels like Hartford, Bridgeport, Norwalk, all of the cities that I like to go, that I'm a part of and that I like to go into, where my people are, my community is, that they have the vibrancy that the people who already live there have. And that means that they have the money and the resources that they need, the schools that they need, the culture that they already have, things that are already there. Let's not pretend that we're gonna make this from, like we're gonna bring these things here. Like they are already there. But they have the ability to shine in its fullness. And that people are not living generation after generational without opportunity unless they move, right? Like people needing to leave where they are in order to be able to gain access and prosperity. And I think that we can see a Connecticut. I mean, we should be able to see a Connecticut. We are one of the wealthiest states, and there's no reason why all of our residents shouldn't be able to feel that way.
Yes. So, how does Cesar take care of Cesar? How do you self-care? How do you, as a Mexican American, with all the things that fall at your feet and on your shoulders, how do you take care of yourself? How do you not become jaded or angry or walk away from, this, like, stops you from, like, you know what, I'm just going to walk away from all this? How do you take care of yourself? How do you do that?
That's a great question. And I mean, I'll just start out by saying, Babz, I'm angry all the time. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean, like, not be angry? I'm angry always. Like, I'm angry always. And I'm
like James Baldwin. To live in America is to be in a constant state of.
Absolutely. And James Baldwin said it best. And I think that I operate from a place of cold anger. I think that that's an important difference, like anger, like how can you go through life and see the poverty, the hunger, the violence that's ravaging our people and our community and not be angry? How? I don't know how to do that. And so I don't. I'm angry always. I'm angry all the time. I don't let that anger consume me. I let that anger fuel the fire that moves my work. And I don't act on anger in the heat of the moment. Although sometimes that feels good. I'm sure, I am human and I am flawed, and I'm sure I've done that in the past. But I really think about letting that anger cool and really thinking about, well, what are we going to do about it? And so that's the first thing I'll say is, like, I'm angry always. And I hope that other people out there are angry about what's happening, because that's really like what's going to happen, what's going to need us to change things as they are. But when it comes to self-care, I come from a Mexican household. We take care of each other. Self-care is a lonesome journey of just being by yourself. And while it's necessary, there are definitely things that I do for me. Like I love to eat. But for me, even eating is a communal process. I like being in community and relationship. One of the hardest things about moving to Connecticut has been being far away from my family. I reflect on that a lot when I think about why opportunity is necessary where we are. Belonging is important. And for me, I belong with my people. I belong with my family. And when I can't be with them, when I can't be with my family, that's hard. That's hard on me. And it's hard on them. And so for me, when I think about self-care, I really think about communal care. I want to be in relationship with other people, taking care of each other. Which again comes back to this work. Like, what do we do? I do it for me. Like, I'm getting care, but I do it with other people. And so I'm very fortunate to have a lovely home here in Connecticut, that I've made a home, not a house, but a home, a community that's filled with vibrancy, that's filled with friends and family and my partner and our family. And I really, and that's where I get my energy. That's where I get my hope. That's where I get my joy and my laughter. And that's where I do my communal care. You know, that's where it happens. And oftentimes it happens in the kitchen. Yeah.
Make sure you leave the back door open so I can come by.
Yes, anytime. You're always welcome.
Come by. So I so appreciate this conversation. I so appreciate that you responded and said you'd come on. I hope that that you would come back on periodically throughout this journey, just to talk to folks and to let us know how you're doing and if there's any support that we can provide as a community work that you're doing. I want to be a part of that. So
thank you so much. Thank you, Babz, for having me. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your thoughtful questions, and thank you for everything that you do. Certainly you will hear from me, and I hope that there are many, many more opportunities for us to be in relationship with each other. And that offer goes both ways. I would love to come back, and if there's ever anything that I can do, you know how to reach me.
Thank you so much, Cesar. Good luck and enjoy this weekend.
Thanks, you too. And thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, Harry, it's our Friday wrap. We are good. Rounded out this week with a wonderful, rich conversation about organizing people. Love that. Thank you so much. That was a damn good conversation.
This is Babz Rawls-Ivy from New Haven, Connecticut, and you're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, streaming live at newhavenindependent.org.